Welcome to our special coverage of the Noor Salman trial here on clickorlando.com. I'm Ginger Gadsden. A new milestone in the jury selection process. Over the past 4 days, 59 people have been questioned. 32 of those people now sit in the potential pool to be jurors in the trial. This now brings us to the halfway point of the 60 people the judge wants to have by the end of the week, before dwindling that number down to 12 and 6 alternates for the final trial. So let's get right out to News 6 investigator Mike DeForest. And Mike, this process is seeming to move along quite nicely here.
It is moving along. It seems to be right on target. The goal is to be able to start opening statements perhaps sometime early to middle of next week. And as long as the judge and the attorneys are able to get through the jurors at the same pace that they have been for the last 4 days, it's looking like that could be a possibility. Now, one of the jurors that we heard from today did express for the first time concern about his own personal safety if he were to be chosen for this jury. Now, the judge told this one prospective juror, as they've been telling many of the jurors, that they are taking steps to try to protect the privacy of these jurors. In particular, when these jurors show up in court, they are not referenced by their names. Their names have not been disclosed. Instead, they're using the jury number that's on their jury badge. Another way that they're going to protect these jurors' identities during the trial is, instead of those jurors driving their personal cars to the courthouse here, they're going to all meet at a secret, top secret, off-site location, and the U.S. Marshal is going to shuttle them over here. And then finally, because this is a federal trial, cameras are not allowed in federal courtrooms. There is a sketch artist, and interestingly, the judge has ordered the sketch artist not to draw any pictures of the jurors. Even though it may not quite resemble them, the judge doesn't want to take any chances that these sketches might be able to identify the jurors. Now, these jurors know that this is a high-profile case. Someone who is no stranger to high-profile criminal cases, attorney Mark O'Mara, who most famously represented George Zimmerman and won an acquittal in that case. That was a high-profile case. Unlike this one, those jurors were sequestered. Tell us a little bit about your concerns, and I don't know how much you want to talk about that particular case, but just your concerns in general of a high-profile case and the need to protect these jurors' identities.
Well, I understand the jurors' concern. As you know, in the Zimmerman case, we actually filed a motion to maintain the jury as anonymous. And the reason why, we wanted to make sure that that jury was not susceptible to a lot of the social pressures that were placed on that Zimmerman case. And those same or similar social pressures exist on this case. There's going to be a lot of backlash against Miss Salman simply because she was related to Mateen, who murdered so many people. So the idea of having a fair and impartial jury is so central to our justice system that anything that we can do to protect those jurors and make sure that no pressures come in from the outside and they can focus only on the evidence, we should do. And of course, Judge Byron is doing everything that he can.
Because we live in the social media era, and I think maybe a couple of years ago they may have been concerned that maybe just a journalist with a microphone may try to ask him questions. But now there seems to be this concern of, is it just a troll on the internet who just wants to harass this person? And that, I got the sense that was that one juror today just expressing, am I going to be outed and people will know this is me?
You know, we know what happens in schools with bullies now. You know, it used to be if I was bullied in school, there was some big guy would push me around. Now bullying happens on social media. It literally is 24/7 and never goes away. So the idea that a jury or individual jurors would be concerned about that harsh reality that we now live in is certainly understandable. Now the civil obligations that we have now can lead to even more concerns. And again, I think they're doing everything they can to try and protect them.
And although no juror has expressed this quite explicitly, this is a case about terrorism. ISIS is going to be mentioned, and you have to imagine, at least at some point in their minds, they have to be wondering, am I going to be a target in the future? And I don't know if that's a realistic concern, but nonetheless, that's just something that I would imagine weighs on them as they're trying to focus on this case.
Well, what's interesting is, if you think about it, let's say that she is convicted. Then if there's going to be backlash from those people who think that she should not be convicted, we do know that that side of it, that concern over that, the ISIL concern, may be a legitimate fear of some of the jurors. On the other hand, the idea that there are patriots out there saying we have to hold somebody responsible, patriots suggesting that someone needs to be held responsible for the tragedy, then you have that side of the pressures on it. The best thing we can do, we cannot do away with the pressures. The best thing we can do is to protect them as best we can and to focus them on exactly what they need to do. The last thing that the judge will do, I'm certain, is keep them anonymous as long as possible. In Zimmerman, we kept it going for 6 months, and quite honestly, by that point, the pressures of the case had subsided enough.
Another aspect that these prospective jurors have been asked about is religion, particularly in a questionnaire that the prospective jurors received before coming to court. They were asked about their feelings about the Muslim faith. Do they have a strong opinion of the Muslim faith? And another interesting question that they were asked is, does the U.S. government let too many Muslims into the country? In a lot of these questions, we've seen the jurors come up and they say, no, I don't have any strong opinions about the Islamic faith. I don't think the U.S. government lets too many of any religion or nationality into the country. There was one woman today, though, who, when asked, does the government let too many Muslims into the country, her written response to the question was, quote, history has proven why. So the judge today said, can you explain what you meant by that a little bit more? And although she backpedaled a little bit on her answer, she seemed to suggest that she may have a concern that people of the Muslim faith there may be concerns, and for that reason, the judge and all the attorneys agreed she should be dismissed from this panel.
And these are the unspoken biases and prejudices that we all bring to every day of our lives, and certainly we bring them to a jury room as jurors. The best thing is that the judges bring it to the forefront, and I think the judge has to allow the attorneys to go in there and dig some of that stuff out, because we all want to be fair and impartial. But we all bring those type of prejudices to us. The worst thing that can happen is that a prejudice or bias like that, only mentioned in a courtroom like today, but then shows up in the jury room, can devastate the concept of justice and give us a bad verdict.
And today the federal prosecutors almost bent over backwards to explicitly say, to remind the court, we are not putting Islam on trial. In this case, we're putting Noor Salman on trial. But the mere fact that that is her background, she was born into a Muslim family, they need to...
I'm sorry, the question is the jury going to put the Islam faith on trial in any form or fashion? Should they do that? It will be an absurd and an illegal verdict if they do. It's up to the defense attorneys, the judge, and the prosecutors to make sure that doesn't happen.
Another issue that's come up in the questioning is domestic violence, or I shouldn't say that. I don't even know that that may have been one of the questions. I do know that the judge has asked them, have you been the victims of any crime? And we have heard from several people, particularly women, who said that they were victims of domestic violence. One woman who remains in the pool says that she was physically abused by her ex-husband and that he actually was criminally punished for that. Another woman today said she was not physically abused but considered herself a domestic violence victim and has a lifetime restraining order against an ex-boyfriend for stalking. Now, part of the reason I imagine this is of interest to both sides is that Noor Salman's defense team has already indicated that they may make domestic violence an issue of this case. They are going to allege that Noor Salman was abused by her husband, Omar Mateen, and perhaps that might explain away some of her behavior with him, and then later perhaps why she may have made what the defense suggests was a false confession.
Sure, and that's absolutely right. And of course, the defense is going to want people on the jury who are sensitized to the harsh reality that not many of the scars and bruises from domestic violence are visible. Many of them are emotional and can affect the way you look at the world, the way you treat your husband or have to react to the abuser, normally the male, and how they're going to show that and how she may have acted in response to whatever his commands were or his indications were. And certainly that's going to be very significant. Quite honestly, if I was in the defense team, I want people who are sensitized to domestic violence on the panel.
Attorney Mark O'Mara, we really appreciate your insight into this. We're continuing to follow this jury selection process. It looks like they've got a little bit more than half of the jurors they need in a pool. The judge wants to get about 60 prospective jurors in this pool before they start whittling it down to the final 12, as well as I think about a half dozen alternates. So we're about halfway there. We're on schedule for opening statements to perhaps begin early next week, and we're just going to be out here all week. Mark O'Mara joining us for some excellent legal commentary. So we're going to send it back to you, Ginger.
Mike DeForest reporting live for us. Mike, thank you. And our coverage continues tonight on clickorlando.com. We have a special page detailing everything with this trial on clickorlando.com/Noor Salman trial. And join us tomorrow morning for another discussion. Our coverage begins at 8:30 right here on clickorlando.com. And that's going to do it for us right now. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Ginger Gadsden. Have a good night.